No, I don't own a house, and I don't expect that I will ever own a house.
We are concerned for our children.
But it might be someone not considering you for a job because you're from overseas.
It's one of the most expensive countries in the world to buy a house.
Absolutely, prices are increasing. Oh my goodness, they're increasing.
Australia's where the devil keeps all of his pets or something, and they're all out to kill you.
And there was a poisonous snake on top of the door. So I just stood there watching it for so long, thinking, oh, please don't wake up.
My name is Samuel Hanford. Everyone calls me Sam.
My name's Gail, and I'm 60.
Well, my name's Rob Shackelford, and I'm 63 years old.
And my name is Deborah Shackelford, and I am 59 years old.
I'm an English teacher on the Gold Coast. I teach English to international students. I work 5 days a week. For 3 days, I work 4 hours, and for 2 days, I work 8 hours.
I'm a journalist, but I'm a freelance journalist, which means I work for many people. Well, being freelance, there's no set routine. So if I was in a full-time job in Australia, I would work 8 hours, but being freelance, sometimes I work 4 hours a day, but if I have a big job on, it could be 10, 12 hours a day. Yeah, because when you work for yourself, you put your business first.
Well, we are kind of retired. That doesn't mean we do nothing, but I'm a writer. I have 5 published books, and actively involved in renovating and landscaping our home.
And I'm in a similar position, sort of semi-retired, yoga teacher. I am teaching myself French. We are doing a lot with our property around here, and I work with 2 volunteer organisations with elderly people.
I do have my own car. I was trying to remember when I first got a car. I think it was in my 20s because I did go overseas when I was young and I didn't need a car. So probably in my 20s, but many Australians get a car as soon as they get their licence at 17.
When my first car, you said my first car, when I was 18.
Mine when I was 17.
No, I don't have a car. I use my girlfriend's car. There's only 1 car space.
I have bought a house, but the bank owns most of it because I have a mortgage. I have a loan on my house, yeah.
No, I don't own a house, and I don't expect that I will ever own a house just because of the economy. I think it's becoming more difficult because of the housing prices increasing. It's more difficult to get a loan from the bank to be able to afford the houses, especially with the hours that we're working. We're not making enough money to make the initial deposit with the bank. It's usually 5% or 10% of the total price of the house. Yeah, I live together with my girlfriend and 1 housemate.
There's many places you can apply for a loan. It's used to be very easy many years ago because banks just wanted to give you money, but now you have to have a regular job. You have to prove that you have an income. If you want to buy a house, you usually need a big deposit, which is the amount that you put down on the house before you get your loan. Can be easy if you have a regular job. Most common is 25 to 30 years. But in Australia, people tend to buy a house for and live in it for 5 years, and then they will sell and they will buy a bigger house. And again, take out a 25-year loan. But all the time they're paying off a lot of the loan. Not many people have that loan for 30 years. Usually they can pay it off before then. 10, 20 years ago, you would take out a loan when you were in your 20s, but now because housing is very, very expensive in Australia, it's one of the most expensive countries in the world to buy a house. Many people don't even get a loan, or they could wait until they're in their mid-30s, because you need to save up a big lump sum to be able to buy a house.
Most of the people that we know own their own home, or they share that ownership with the bank. It's not easy in Australia getting a loan for a house.
Especially for young people. We are concerned for our children who we just don't know how they're going to be able to afford a house. It's a very difficult thing. Housing prices are going up, rental prices going up.
And they need such a big free deposit to put down on a purchase. Otherwise, if they can't put that deposit down, they have to take out mortgage insurance, which is very expensive. So, yeah, it's hard these days to have a lot of spare cash, but that's what people need to start buying a house.
No, most of my friends are renting, similar to me. I only know one person who recently bought a house, and that was a big thing.
It's a mixture. Many people rent. I guess more of my friends own. And my son, who is 27, he just bought his first house. So, you know, people still buy in their 20s, but it's getting harder and harder.
Yes, yeah, even for me, it's really competitive. When I was searching, I had to look at 15 places, 20 places, and I would apply for every place, and I'd maybe hear back from one or two.
Very difficult all over Australia, even in the regional areas. Very low vacancy rate. There's not much around, and that contributes to a lot of homelessness in Australia, which is sad. So one thing, you know, the government is looking at is housing, trying to create more housing supply.
Aussie lifestyle. My first thought is it's very beach lifestyle. Everyone loves going to the beach after work, after school, or in the mornings. Everyone loves surfing. There's a big drinking culture as well. It's a really social thing to get together with friends and have some beers.
In Australia, we tend to be a lot more, let me say it, we tend to be rather free. Australians tend to be a little bit more laid back. A lot of Australians...
Not too serious.
Yeah. A lot of Australians are ignorant of international, comparing themselves to other countries. So while they might compare themselves on the media, say English or American movies and such, I think in general Australians tend to have a lot of freedoms. Because most Australians live along the coasts, there tends to be a culture of beach and coastal lifestyles.
It's a very laid back society because of the weather. The weather, it's quite sunny, so even if you can't afford to do very much, you could just go out to the beach, and that is free. And that is a really nice thing to be able to do, to relax. They're very laid back, people are very friendly, there's plenty of food, plenty of things to do.
It's hard to speak on behalf of a big population, you know, because we're fortunate to live at where we're at now, but we've had to work hard to get here, and there's a lot of people out there working hard to get there. So I think, like Rob said, the Aussie lifestyle is generally don't take things too serious, but I think with the way things are going up in price and with I think there's a lot of pressure coming down on people that's probably not making them feel quite so, hey, everything's
privileged.
Fine. Yeah. So,
but
things are changing, aren't they?
Yeah, the Aussie lifestyle does still tend to be that cliche of a lot more outdoors, a lot of camping, a lot of beach lifestyle, a lot of hiking.
Yeah.
There's always going to be those who don't fit that, but we tend to spend most of our time outside working around our home.
And travelling. Overseas.
Yeah, we like to travel, which is kind of a funny thing because Australians tend to travel overseas more than they travel in their own country. Until you get to being a grey nomad, 70 years old plus, and then they drive around their own country, clog up the roads with caravans and camper vans. But that seems to be where we are now. Where we will be like that in 10 years' time, we don't know.
Stereotypes. Okay, probably that the sun shines everywhere. We have snow here. People ski here. We have very good ski fields. And also, Australia is the same size as the United States of America. Australia is very big, and I think when people come here, especially if they've come from Europe where you can get to another country very quickly, they don't realise it can take 9 hours to fly across the country, or 3 days to drive.
There can be a little bit of a thing overseas about Australians wearing sleeveless t-shirts and constantly having a beer in one hand and a sausage in the other, and yeah, she'll be right, mate, that kind of thing. I don't know that we all represent that.
Yeah, it is a funny one, the Aussie stereotype, you know, the accent.
And it was very much put into place by Paul Hogan many years ago, one of our actors, Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee, and Steve Irwin, another Australian character who's since passed away, but they were very much like that.
I think it's the accent, the Australian accent. I don't know if we have an accent. Do we have an accent? But but there are some really strong accents out there. I'm sure that
the further west you go, the least you will understand anybody.
Yeah, generally the Australian accent is kind of the same throughout the country, but you go country and the accent's pretty strong. It's pretty crazy.
Other stereotypes are things like kangaroos hopping down the roads. People think there are kangaroos everywhere in the cities. Sometimes it happens, but that's an accident. Yes.
I think generally it's true that Australians are really friendly, really open people, but I think maybe there is too much of a stereotype about this, and people forget about the negative side as well. They forget about the racism that still exists. Absolutely, yeah, you see it all the time, just in like small behavior, small actions. It's not always outright people shouting insults at you, but it might be someone not considering you for a job because you're from overseas. I have met a student before who was living with a homestay family, and that family was really not tolerant of other cultures, and they were really strict about their house rules, and they weren't understanding of the student coming from a different culture and not understanding their rules. So there was sort of some tension and some arguments about the difference in culture, but I don't know if that was necessarily like intentional racism.
Yes, I think it does. I think it's getting there's a lot more awareness around it. What do you think?
I think there's almost an innate racism against the native populations, Aboriginals. There is a certain amount of racism against those. I think Australia generally, though, is quite an egalitarian country. It tends to take people for who they are rather than what they are. Foreigners would probably say otherwise, but the way I see it, Australians aren't overtly racist. They don't overtly hate people for colour or for race. I may be wrong, but generally people are pretty well take you as you are. There tends to be a little bit of because of politics, global politics, there might be a little bit of an anti-Asian sentiment, which I find particularly distressing, because I don't believe Deb and I are racists at all. It doesn't matter who you are, it's the sort of person you are, or not what you are, it's the sort of person you are. But and I think a lot of Australians are like that. You will always find a certain group of people who might be racist, but in general I think Australia's pretty good.
Yeah.
At the moment, our Prime Minister is Anthony Albanese.
I would say he's a Prime Minister like any other Prime Minister that this country's had. They do vary, but they do make a lot of promises, and they get in at election time, and then they just don't keep them. So the country makes out it's got two major parties, but they're all the same at the end of the day. Yeah. Look,
the current Prime Minister was elected because the former Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, was so unpopular. Is Albanese any better? Sometimes. He doesn't have as bad a profile as the previous Prime Minister. But like Deb said, I mean, do they ever really make any difference? Not really.
I think he is supposed to be in the centre, sort of leaning a little bit left, but he's probably more dead centre. I think he is the most left Prime Minister we've had for a while. It's usually been more to the right. So there are some improvements, but there's still some tension as well.
We honestly, we've discussed this one before on a number of occasions, and we believe people that, we can only speak for this country, but go into politics because they really believe they might be able to make a difference. But when they do get in, and the reality of what they're up against in order to make changes, they ultimately just become part of a big
machine.
Yeah, the big same system, the machine.
Yeah, you either drown or
Yeah.
you decide that you're going to be like everyone else.
Yeah.
I personally don't have a lot of faith in politicians.
No.
I believe our politicians are largely driven by corporations and their sponsors or their donors, whichever you'd like to call it. I think politicians in Australia, the thing that annoys me the most is how much corporate welfare is paid, where the government pays taxpayer money to corporations, where they should be putting that money to the people. Saying that, then they'd call me a socialist. I believe that the government is there for the people. The taxpayer money should be going to the people. At the same time, to say something controversial, I think Australia follows the American foreign policy too closely. Australia tends to support America in every crooked little war they start. And Australia should stand on its own 2 feet. I don't know why that is. There must be something they have over us. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter which political party comes into power in Australia, their policies still seem to be the same, and they still seem to be eager to follow policies which we really shouldn't.
And as a side note, without naming names, whenever we have had a Prime Minister or a politician that really does look like they're going to pop up above the surface and be able to make a difference, particularly internationally, suddenly they don't have that role anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying they're killed or anything like that, but they just they're removed.
Get sacked.
They get sacked.
So
they lose their position, and you sort of realise that now they just have a seat in the back of the Parliament.
Yeah. So what does that mean? While we think Australia is a good country, and that the people are we lucky? Perhaps not as lucky as we used to be, but unfortunately, we feel that our politicians are either hamstrung or they don't have the will that they say they have when they're going into election. That doesn't mean, I believe, we're in a better position than, say, the UK or the USA. But at the same time, it's still of concern to us.
Yeah.
I think they probably have a bad reputation just for being lazy is the big thing. Not getting enough work done, not changing policies, this kind of thing. It seems like there's no progress. Well, if we think about the referendum we had recently, which was getting Aboriginal people, First Nations people, having an organisation in the government for them, that referendum failed. So the Australian public said no to that. And I think that's really backwards, really, old style thinking, which was a surprising outcome. Yeah, there's a lot of Australian people that don't follow politics at all. Why? I think we've got two political parties in Australia, and we've had, it's Liberal and Labor, and we've had a Liberal government for a really long time, and I think a lot of people just think that it's not possible to change the system, so they don't participate. They don't think their vote matters. I think it's really important to register and to vote. I vote in every election. I think every person counts, and if I can make a change, why not try?
Absolutely, prices are increasing. Oh my goodness, they're increasing. Particularly when you're trying to shop, keeping in mind, when we shop, we try and think of cruelty to animals in relation to certain products, how those animals were kept in producing the food that we need to consume. We're trying to think of our own health, what's been sprayed, what hasn't been sprayed, what's all these different things. And just as an example, today I went to the shop to buy 500 grams of cheese, keeping in mind about the animals. I settled on some cheese. It wasn't organic, it was nothing special, and I bought some milk, and it was $16. That's a lot of money. That I often think this would make my grandmother just turn in her grave, having to part with that money to buy two such basic things. You know, 3 bags of groceries now is costing anybody out there close to $200, and it's not that long ago it would have been $100. So everything is just kind of creeping up incrementally, very carefully, and yeah, you have to shop cleverly, don't you?
The cost of groceries has definitely gone up, which would be causing a lot of distress.
And electricity and rent and mortgages and houses.
You know, you try and buy a house or you try and rent a house, the cost is ludicrous. So again, just as an example, my father, blue collar worker, worked in a factory. My mother never worked. She stayed at home and looked after the kids. My parents, in the end, had 6 children. I was the oldest. And my father used to work a little bit of overtime, and he was able to buy a house, buy a car, and raise 6 kids on 1 wage.
Cannot be done.
Impossible today, impossible. With 2 wages, still almost impossible. So are prices going up? Yes. What's our economic policy like? Well, we're probably not as bad as some. It seems to be a global situation. But to answer your question, prices are going up. Why is it? I don't know.
And as a little side note, another side note, just in defence of your dear mum, I have to say, staying home and raising 6 children is work.
Oh gosh, yes.
Just of the unpaid variety.
Yes.
Well, Australia's got quite a stable economy, but yeah, cost of living and inflation is really, really high. And that is why interest rates are going up a lot, which makes it hard for people to buy houses. So I think all over the world, inflation is very high, and all these central banks are trying to get it down. And the way we do that in Australia is by putting interest rates up. So that's creating a lot of pain for people, but the reasoning is that over time we will return to a more stable economy.
I think the prices of everything are increasing. Buying a house, renting a house, buying groceries, everything like in the supermarket is $1 or $2 more expensive in the last couple of years. Petrol definitely is more expensive. Just generally the cost of living is going up.
They need to get dental care onto Medicare.
Yes.
Yeah, they really need, everybody should be entitled to go to the dentist at least once a year and not have to pay
Dentist?
couple of $100 just to go and have your teeth looked at and cleaned. And for a lot of people in the economy, the way the economy's going, that's just so far down their line of priorities, they can't even consider it. And it should just be a Medicare right. Everybody should get 1 trip to the dentist a year.
I think how could Australia improve? I find that gradually little things are being taken away from us. When I first went to university after school, it was free. University cost me nothing. The books cost me something, but university didn't. If we went to the doctor, it cost you nothing. Going to school,
Cost nothing.
the schools were very good, and there were very few private schools. So the public schools cost us nothing. Everybody went there. Now, university costs a lot of money. Medical, they're taking more and more away from us as far as what our taxes pay for, and private schools tend to be getting more government funding than the public schools, which are supposed to get the government funding. So I think Australia is in a position where it tends to be favouring the rich more than looking after everybody, and again, that's. Again, you know, we tend to be engaging in too many wars overseas.
We need to, I think we ultimately need to start looking at standing on our own 2 feet like New Zealand does. and just not be so intent on following what our bigger brother over the Pacific Ocean does all the time.
Yeah.
Because he's not the best influence.
Yeah, we should be looking after ourselves.
One thing I hear from a lot of the students is how difficult it is to get a job and how difficult it is to rent an apartment. So I think there should be some kind of policy in place to support international students because they are a big part of our economy. I think one of the things about Australia that I want to mention is when we study history at school, we have a very limited perspective. We only look at Australian history or Australian involvement in the war. We don't really look at, the German perspective or the American perspective. And that's the same in a lot of schools across Australia. So I think talking to students from other countries, their education is quite different from ours. They have a lot more world knowledge, and we're really focused on Australian knowledge.
No, I haven't. No. I mean, I'm sensible, as I would be in any country around the world. I don't go to certain places in the dark or, where it's quite rough. But no, I've never felt unsafe.
Maybe when I first moved to the Gold Coast, when I was really young, I felt a bit unsafe walking around alone at night because the Southport and Surfers Paradise areas had a reputation for homeless people, for drunk people, for drug addicts. But once I've been living here for a long time now, I'm a lot more confident. I've never had any dangerous experiences.
I think Australia generally, you'd have to be unlucky to be in a place where you don't feel safe. There might be some parts of inner cities, and mostly after midnight. So if you're out in the city or in a populated place where there's a lot of nightclubs.
Or in an extremely unpopulated place, like if you're actually on your own somewhere. Like, I'm not talking the city, I'm talking just somewhere out in it. It can be the absolute extreme,
Yeah, I guess so. But generally, no, Australia's a pretty safe place.
We're safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel not safe here.
When I was in high school, we had a sports day every Wednesday afternoon. We'd all go and do sports. So I used to do soccer, badminton, tennis, but I don't practice now. Nothing now, no time. Yes, yeah, we did swimming lessons in primary school. Same thing again, every week, one afternoon, we'd walk from the school to the pool and do swimming lessons.
You grow up knowing a sport. We all had to learn to swim. Every Saturday afternoon, there's usually school sport on or some sport that you play. I played a lot of tennis as a kid and I still play tennis now. I also have just taken up golf and I play something called pickleball, which is very popular all around the world, and I'm loving it.
We go to the gym probably 5 out of 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. I love golf. I play golf whenever I can. I've had a history of anything with a bat and ball, tennis, badminton, table tennis, cricket, you name it, I'll play it. But it's golf for now and going to the gym.
Yeah, for me, just going to the gym. I used to practice martial arts, but not now. My body has to heal from all that, so.
I don't, but I did try once. I just didn't have enough balance.
I've never surfed. I have done a lot of
Body surf?
Body surfing, where you lie on a smaller kind of flotation
or without anything
device,
at all.
or without anything at all, but not stand-up surfing.
No, I've been in the surf ski, so you paddle in the surf, and also body surfing. So yeah,
it's good fun.
So the surf, I mean, sometimes you can be in there all day. And you get pretty sunburned, but it's fun.
I haven't surfed on a surfboard, but there's a thing called a bodyboard. So I used to do a lot of that as a kid, and I still do that. Or you can just catch a wave, so you don't need a board. You just in the surf and the waves are coming, and if you time it right, you can surf all the way into the shore.
I've been to a lot of different cities, actually. I've been up around Brisbane, around the Sunshine Coast, very beautiful beaches up there. I've been down to Byron Bay. I grew up around Byron Bay, actually. It's amazing. I've been to Sydney a few times. I've got family down there. I recently went to Perth over the other side for the first time, and that was amazing. Probably my favorite place would be Byron Bay. It's the place I recommend for everyone. It's the most beautiful place, I think, with the beach and the lighthouse and the chill vibes.
I've travelled a lot in Australia because I love walking and I do lots of walks. I love Tasmania because it's very beautiful, great place to live. But last year I went on a trip to Western Australia with my son and his girlfriend. We went to a place called the Dampier Peninsula, and we were in a car that made it easy to get to places that many people can't go to. So we'd end up in campsites where we were the only people on the beach, no one else around. So it was beautiful.
It's coming to mind.
I think here.
I think where we've chosen to be, yeah. On top of Mount Tamborine. You know, it doesn't flood up here.
Yeah.
It's green, it's in the rainforest, it's close to the Gold Coast. We can go and play if we want to, but we can also be just nice and on our own and isolated with our local friends for as long as we want to be too. We've got all the, what's the word I'm after? Facilities we need up here.
Or on the coast.
Or on the coast.
Down at the Gold Coast.
So we're not too far from the Gold Coast or Brisbane, you know, an hour at most. But it's lovely up here, no street lights, no noise at night, lots of animals, lots of snakes. Got snakes, they're pretty cool. Yeah, I like it up here.
No, I don't think so. I think I would rather say for a first itinerary, don't just go to the cities. Make sure you go outside the cities because there's just beautiful landscapes and there's wineries and beaches all up and down, all around Australia, really, really beautiful beaches and mountains and hiking and surfing. If you're coming here for a short time, make sure you go outside the cities.
What do we say? The Simpson Desert is probably not a good place to go the first time you're in Australia.
And Western Sydney.
And Western Sydney.
And Western Melbourne.
Yeah.
Look, I mean...
Do your research.
Do your research.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some lovely places. I mean, parts of the Gold Coast are fabulous, and then some of them aren't. So, just talk to people who've been there. And Australia is a good place, but it's not heaven on earth. It has its problems, but they're not too bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I really have an opinion. There are some people who say there's too many foreign people in Australia. That's that racist thing coming out again. They should go home. Australia is full. But I don't know, I think it's important to have this mix of cultures and meet people from all over. Like I said before, it is good for the Australian economy as well.
Australia is immigrants, and immigrants come in various waves. When I was a kid, it was English, and then it became Italian and Greek, and then you have Vietnamese, and then you have so different immigrants make Australia what it is. It's a rich cultural. It has a rich cultural heritage to base itself on. Australia itself, you might go, what's typically Australian food? And we go, spaghetti or...
That one's coming.
But
we've got 26 million people and 18 million are born in Australia. Nearly 8 million are born overseas. So about a third of our population, which I think's fabulous because it gives us so much diversity and opportunity to experience other cultures here. Foods, Italy, Vietnam, I mean, we've just got it all.
Completely true, yeah. I think it's like the top 10 deadliest snakes in the world, like 3 of them are in Australia. A lot of spiders as well. A lot of people are concerned about the animals when they come to Australia. But I don't think it's really a big problem. I think it's like over-exaggerated maybe. Like you don't see these spiders in your house all the time.
Yeah, there are animals that can kill you, but very rare. There's dangerous snakes, but all these animals are scared of you. But I mean, the animals that I find are annoying are things like magpies, that come and swoop you when they're building their nest, and they are very annoying, and they can leave a nasty dent in your head. When I grew up, I used to put in, an ice cream plastic ice cream tub on my head, walking to school.
Maybe the strangest one I saw was the echidna. It's a small animal, very long nose, lots of spikes on its back. It's only found in Australia.
So I grew up on a farm and there were plenty of snakes there. And my worst story is we used to have hens in a hen house, you know, chooks, and I used to have to collect the eggs every day. You'd have to walk under this door. And once I walked under the door, got the eggs, turned around, and there was a poisonous snake on top of the door. And I had to go underneath it to get out. So I just stood there watching it for so long, thinking, oh, please don't wake up.
Do you learn at school about the snakes?
Yeah, you do, and your family teach you. You know, your mum and dad teach you or whatever.
I suppose so.
Well, they can. I mean, we have 8 out of 10 of the most deadliest snakes in the world. We do have some pretty big spiders. Big doesn't mean they'll kill you. In fact, if anything, our little redback is probably one of our most threatening to make you pretty sick.
One of the deadliest creatures in the world is the funnel web spider, and that's down in Sydney.
Yeah, well, we don't see that here.
No. We do have funnel web spiders here.
I haven't seen one.
If you see a hole in the lawn, that's a funnel web spider.
Right,
but it's not a Sydney funnel web spider.
Not going looking for holes in the lawn anytime
Yeah,
soon.
you see them. Sometimes if you shine a torch down there, you see their eyes looking out at you. But Australia is known to be the place. I mean, you've got blue-ringed octopus, and you've got, you know, Deb said, the spiders and the snakes and you don't think anything of it.
And if
really.
you walk up to a great big male red kangaroo and he's not happy, he'll kill you. He'll just flatten you with his back legs.
Yeah, but it's about common sense, really. I mean, I always laugh because somebody once said that it's Australia's where the devil keeps all of his pets or something, and they're all out to kill you. And yet, you know, there are worse spiders in say Argentina or South America, you know, and there are snakes there. It's just we seem to have kind of a concentration.
Crocodiles, they'll kill you.
And blue and box jellyfish.
And what's that?
And irukandji.
Irukandji, yeah.
Irukandji. Well, you know the box jellyfish? Yes. Well, a lot of the deaths attributed to the box jellyfish are actually the irukandji, and the irukandji is a little jellyfish this big.
But it's got a huge, long, tail on it.
stingy thing, and if that gets you, that could kill you as well.
What else?
Yeah, we
Sharks.
do have a lot, don't we?
Yeah,
We've got sharks.
Big sharks. I'll eat
Deb
you.
went diving last week and she saw a bunch of sharks. Yeah, none of them are eating. Oh no, did we see a tiger? I'm not sure. But anyway, we saw a few. But
it's about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, which I think is pretty much the rule.
And making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Don't walk barefoot. Don't walk barefoot through long grass.
No. And don't walk barefoot on the beach anywhere north of about Cairns, because that's where crocodiles like to.
Yeah, that's why you. Yeah, I guess so.
Yes, I've been to New Zealand a few times. I've got family in New Zealand as well, and I've been to Japan twice.
Yes, I'm very well travelled, like many Australians, because what happens is Australia is so far from other countries. So when you do go overseas and make that very long flight, you want to see as much as you can. So many Australians, when they finish school, they can get a working visa for 2 years in Europe. Well, I shouldn't say you all can in all countries, but you can get one. And people stay there for 2 years, and they might, if they're going to Europe, base themselves in England and go to all the European countries.
I've been to New Zealand a lot more because of my family, but if I had to choose, I would prefer Japan, just because it's so different from Australian culture.
My two favourite countries are Spain and Portugal. I just think their lifestyle is very similar to Australia. They're very laid back, they love eating, drinking, relaxing, and great scenery as well.
The southern half of New Zealand is right up there with my favourite part of the world. Scotland, Turkey, Mexico, Canada.
Yeah, they're great.
Nepal, I mean...
And Argentina.
And Argentina.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Argentina's pretty nice. Oh gosh, too hard to say. Norway, anywhere in Scandinavia, I'll go back to in a heartbeat.
The question's often asked, or some people say, this is the best country in the world. And I always go, there is no best country in the world, because every country you go to, there's wonderful parts. And to say this is the best country in the world, you sort of go, how can you say that? So even Australians, we get Australians who've never travelled overseas, oh, this is the best country in the world. You go, okay.
Compared to what?
Yeah, compared to what have your experiences? So for us, we have had some wonderful experiences, and we look forward to having many, many more.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place.
One of my favourite Australian phrases is good on ya. Instead of good on you, good on ya, good on ya. Yeah, it's like good job, well done, you know, very cool, this kind of idea.
Flat out like a lizard drinking. What? That means I'm as busy as...
You're flat out.
You're like a lizard is flat, right? And I'm so busy. I'm just as flat as a lizard, trying to just drink. You know, flat out like a lizard drinking. That.
There's one called like I'm chockers. Do you know what I'm chockers means? It means you're very full. You're chock full. So you may have a big meal and you just go back. Oh, I'm chockers.
Do you want to hear mine? You might have to edit it. Yes. How's your bum for grubs?
How's your bum for grubs?
How are you? But it's a little bit rude.
And there's another one, I was trying to think of one that you may not know. It's don't come the raw prawn. Do you know what this would mean?
No, obviously not.
If someone is trying to deceive you or lie to you. So say for example, you might want to rent a property and the agent takes you to the property and it's terrible. And the agent goes, everyone loves this place, you know, it's got this, that. You can go, don't come the raw prawn with me. Don't try and deceive me. I know you're lying.
It's crazy. Australia's very good at making up just the funniest slang. And I think as a people from Australia, we do understand when these sentences are said to us. We do understand what they mean, and that's just weird.
Yeah.
Why would you understand that?
Yeah, so many of our words we make short and we put E or O on the end. Like service station becomes servo. I think it's because we came from England, we came from Britain, Australia really wanted to have a different identity and make themselves different from England. So I think that's where a lot of our slang and a lot of our language comes from, trying to create a national identity. And we're also, like I said, laid back, casual. So having these short words, these slang words, is kind of a way to express this casual culture.
Yeah, we cut words and we extend them. So if you were born and your name was Ted, you'd be called Teddy. And if you were born and your name was Teddy, you'd be called Ted. It's just the way they do it.
Or Jack is Jacko.
Yeah, or Jackie, or...
My surname is Shackleford. So when I was a kid, I was called Shack.
Our surname.
Our surname. Mm-hmm. Okay. I was called Shack or Shacko. And yet. And
I was Mackay, and I'd get Mac, Mackie, Mackaiser. And
yet Deborah Jane is either called Deb or Debs, or
never Deborah Jane.
It's never the way you. So be prepared.
Yeah, good day is probably what you'd hear in England.
Yeah.
In a posh part of London, they might say, "Oh, good day," but we took that and we slammed it shut, and it's just
G'day, mate. How are you? How you going?
Oh, that's an awful one. How you going?
Yeah. And look, you know, isn't it funny when you come across somebody who speaks Aussie, you know, and you go, do people still do that? You know, but I guess in a way we do it as well.
Yeah.
So.
So there's a game called Two Up, where there's 2 coins, 2 pennies. It's illegal, you can't play it on any other day but Anzac Day, and people bet on, you flick them and you bet whether it's going to be both heads, both tails, or head and tails. I think there is one place in Australia where it is legal, but it's basically illegal to bet on this game of Two Up, except on Anzac Day, which is April 25.
Where I'm from, around Byron Bay, I'm from a town called Ballina, and there's a very big Aboriginal First Nations community in Ballina. So we had a lot of these First Nations traditions at our school. And the First Nations people, they have a spoken language, but no written language. So they communicate all of their history and all of their stories through music and through dance. So every now and then when we had a big school ceremony, there would be a group of First Nations people who would come in and do a dance and tell a story as well. So I think it's really important to keep that traditional Australian culture alive.
Vegemite.
I guess so, Vegemite. Look, it's a difficult one because a lot of our traditions, because we're multicultural, our traditions are borrowed from other countries. So, you know, we celebrate Christmas, but our Christmas is in the hottest time of the year. So Christmas for us is watermelon and prawns and things like that. It's not making a big hot dinner because it's too hot. So that's not uniquely Australian, because any country below the equator has that same situation. But for us, it's very strong where we have that British cultural heritage placed into a tropical place. It in a way becomes unique.
We don't have any Australian cuisine. So again, because we came from England, we have a lot of traditional English food, like meat pies, fish and chip, this kind of thing. We don't really have any specific Australian dishes. We have a lot of snack foods, a lot of junk food, like Tim Tams, but nothing I would say is a traditional dish.
It's world class, and many famous chefs come here and they say it's very, very good food. Because we have all the different cultures here that I mentioned before, they bring all their influence, all their skills. And I think one food that has really become popular is Thai food. So it's probably in the last 30 years when Thai food first came out, because Australian cooking was very plain. It was meat and 3 vegetables. That was the dinner every night. And you may hear people go, oh yeah, I grew up on meat and 3 veg. That was our dinner every night. And now we have Japanese, which is fantastic, Thai food, Indian food, it's fantastic.
And we're going, well, what's Australian, you know, and kangaroo steak? I mean, you know, what is Australian? But the best part of Australia is that we do adopt and take new foods and make it Australian.
Steal them. None of this adoption stuff.
Yes.
They're stolen. But I think because we are just a collective group of people from all over, and we're extremely young, you know, we're only a couple of 100 years old. We don't have any we don't have, our Indigenous people certainly have their culture and the way they express that through dance and painting and things like that. But I think as us settlers from other countries, if you like, we haven't even got the time to have established anything, because we're just such a mixture.
Yeah, and it's so new, really. I mean,
we are so new, we're so young.
Yes, Australian culture essentially is British, you know, and then on top of that,
everything else that's influenced
new things, you know, those cultures, Italy, Greece, you know, all those others as all those waves came in, Asian influences, you know, so it is rather a melting pot of many races.
Lots of things.
First, I think if you are studying and you have a student card, you need to take advantage of the student discounts. A lot of places have adult tickets and student tickets or concession tickets, so I think take advantage of the discounts. If you can learn the public transport system, whatever city you're going to, you should look into the public transport. Like for example, around Perth, there are free buses around the city.
As I said before, don't just look at the main cities, Sydney and Melbourne. There are many advantages to going to places like Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, and the regional areas. And the regional areas love having, people. There's not much population in these towns. They love having more people living there, and there's so much beauty there. I think a city is a city, no matter where you are. I know Sydney has amazing beauty with the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House, but there's so much more to Australia than just the cities. So I'd advise anyone just to look outside, and also maybe if they have time to buy a van and travel around and get a really good feel for what's on offer.
Do your research and know where you want to go. Learn how to drive, because we're not well known, this country's not well known for its public transport system. Melbourne's pretty good, but leave the main CBD and you're on your own. And I think to choose Australia, to come, hopefully have a job lined up and have some money behind you. It will make it a more pleasant experience.
But in general, I think that Australia is still quite a tolerant place.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
The LGBTQI thing, generally, there's an enormous amount of tolerance. For race, generally, Australia requires you to speak English. So if you can't speak English, you'll have difficulties. There's not a lot of multilingual people in Australia unless they're immigrants themselves. And as Deb said, if you've got work tied up, then that'll help you a lot.
I would say not the weather. I don't like the summer. It's too hot for me. Maybe just the general vibe. I get the feeling that Australia is really laid back and really relaxed compared to other countries. It's just generally a safe, happy place to be.
I like our isolation. I like being down here in the Southern Hemisphere, a long way away from really what is out there and going on. I like a lot about Australia that we've just lived through a Christmas tornado, Christmas hail, 1/2 metre of rain over 48 hours. And I must admit, when I saw all the Telstra trucks and all the Energex trucks and all the SES trucks and all the people that came literally to our rescue, it makes me feel very warm and fuzzy that we are in this country, because what we say is when the chips are down, when everything's kind of fallen over, there's a lot of community to bring you back up. And I think we're very fortunate, because there's a lot of countries around the world that when that sort of thing happens for years and years and years and years, they don't get support.
Yeah, Australia is I still like to think that it's an equal country. I do think that, like the world, that the rich are favoured, the poor aren't. I come from a working class family, so it's easy for me to say that. But Australia is still a good place, and the people are good people.
Fundamentally, I think so.
Yeah, and it's a lovely countryside. We are a long way away from the rest of the world.
The only thing is, it makes it super expensive if we want to go travelling overseas. You go for a long time, you have to make the most of your airfares, because it costs a fortune.
Yeah, but in general, Australia, I mean, I'm grateful of where we live, which is sort of in the green, but Australia is a place where you can get out into the open. I know there's a lot of places where you can, but our population against surface area isn't very large. And while most of our population live around the rim, an hour away you can be alone, far away, just in an hour's drive. So in that regard, we are very, very fortunate. Yeah, that's one of the good things about Australia, is that while we don't have an enormous amount of wildlife like, say, Africa or some countries. We see kangaroo. We don't see kangaroos up here that often, but we see them a lot. Yeah. And so far, we haven't been polluted or developed or ruined to the point that we never see our own native wildlife, which is kind of cool.
I like the friendliness of the people. I like that it is multicultural and there are people from all over the world that live here. I think that's really contributed to a more inclusive society. When you live with other people's cultures, they bring them into the country. So I like that because you can experience the world in one country just because of all the different nationalities that live here.